Hi, my name is Aaron, this is my show Reeducation, and today I want to talk about the recent video done by philosophy tube Oliver Thorn about Ben Shapiro and his stance on abortion. So, abortion. It seems like a pretty cut and dry issue, right? I mean, most of my audience is pro-choice, and we think that the pro-life arguments are probably flawed and probably not worth a whole lot. And to a certain extent, I would agree with you. I am pro-choice. But I'm also pro-life. Just like I think most people actually are. When we're talking about the abortion debate, we are fundamentally talking about freedom or life. Someone's right to bodily autonomy or someone's right to live. And that actually is a complicated issue. It's something that we shouldn't just take lightly. And in Oliver Thorn's video, which was a fantastic video, please check it out, he assumed or took the position that pro-choice was the correct one. At least to a large extent he did. And Ben Shapiro, we all know, takes the idea of pro-life to be the correct one for him. And we can see that in pretty much any debate that he's ever had on the issue. But I'm going to posit that it's really not quite that simple. Oliver chooses freedom, and Ben chooses life. But to have either of these be logical arguments, we have to accept two premises. One, that we have the right to bodily autonomy, and two, that we have the right to life. You have to accept both these premises because if you don't, you could simply just say that life counters freedom, or freedom counters life. And if you do believe that, then move along. There's no reason for you to watch this video because you've already made up your mind. But to those of you who actually think that this might be a compelling place to start, it actually brings up a whole lot of really interesting questions. So let's assume, just like Philosophy Tube did, and just like Ben Shapiro does, that life does start at conception. And once you've already had that sperm enter the egg, then you have created a form of life. It's very basic life. As far as I'm concerned, it's not even qualifiable as a viable human being, but there's no doubting that it is alive. It is life. The second that you go from a zygote to anything further along in that stage, you have created part of the human being. Part of the beginning processes of making a person. So it is technically life. It just depends on where you define how we can kill it. Hang on. Now I know a lot of my commenters are going to be jumping into the comment section right now and telling me how wrong I am because it hasn't formed a brain yet, or it hasn't begun the ability to think, or it hasn't even dropped into the proper part of the womb for it to actually become viable. And yeah, you're right. All of those things are totally correct, but it doesn't negate the fact that it is a living piece of DNA, human tissue, that will eventually turn into a life. It's not a matter of whether or not it is alive. It's technically alive the second that it's conceived. In fact, you could make an argument that sperm cells are alive. They're living tissue, and the egg itself is living tissue. Every time you ejaculate, you're committing mass genocide because those could be considered lives. And I'm not going to deny that, because it's true. But the fact that it's life doesn't really make much of a difference. I mean, we commit mass genocide every time we brush our teeth and kill the bacteria that's in our mouth. Like I said, it's just a matter of when we've decided that we can kill it. I get it. That's a frustrating argument. And everybody in the comment section is going to lose their minds right now because I'm comparing babies to bacteria and I'm saying that all zygotes are alive and that sort of thing. And everybody's going to lose their mind. But the fact of the matter is that we are actually dealing with a true dichotomy here. We're dealing with killing a life or the freedom of someone's bodily autonomy. This is the real argument. This is what we're fighting. It's not just a matter of semantics, whether or not this zygote has become viable enough to become a human being or not. That really doesn't matter. At any stage, we can say, oh, well, it's produced a brain. Now we can say that it's alive. Well, what about the stages leading to the development of that brain? Where do we draw the line there? Or we could say that it's finally gotten the ability to think for itself. But really, we can't make the determination there either, because even after a baby is born, its brain is still developing. Its idea of self, its sense of self, is still developing. It isn't until about 18 months that babies really understand that they can see themselves when they're looking in a mirror. So their sense of self clearly is not developed. And honestly, we could say that about a lot of other life forms, like dogs or fish. It doesn't mean that they're not alive. It just simply means that they don't understand that they are alive. So like Oliver said, it is a pretty interesting philosophical debate to have. When do we determine if something is or isn't a human being, or has the rights of a human being? That's not really a biological question. That's a legal one. It's a philosophical one. It's one that you feel in your gut. So in Oliver's video, it outlined a really interesting experiment, an idea that opens up your mind to how this whole thing could work under different circumstances. The idea was that somebody, a violinist in this example, needed your body to live. So you were connected surgically. And Philosophy Tube, being witty as always, put Ben Shapiro in that position. Ben was now forced to help this person stay alive. A lot like the way that we treat women in this whole debate. They're being forced to keep an infant baby alive. And just like in real life, if we were to deny that baby from having that woman's body to live, it would die. And it brings up all kinds of interesting philosophical problems, such as, is it okay for somebody to use someone else's body to stay alive? And if so, for how long? If removing this person from the other person would kill them, would we consider that to be murder? Or would we consider it to be just letting someone die? And if so, wouldn't that mean that putting someone inside of a cage and leaving them to starve to death would also be okay? Does bodily autonomy take precedence over life? Or does your right to life outweigh your right to convenience? These are all very interesting questions, all very interesting philosophical questions. But right-wingers aren't really looking at it that way. And the left doesn't look at it that way either. This isn't a matter of what is right and what is wrong. It's a matter of they're both right and they're both wrong. This is simply a debate over what you personally feel takes precedence. Your right to life or your right to freedom. Funny enough, being that this is a video about Ben Shapiro, the idea of bodily autonomy or the right to life, those ideas are just feelings arguments. They're not based in fact.
I'm not inclined to continue an interview with a person as badly motivated as you as an interviewer. So I think we're done here. I appreciate your time, sir.
All right,
Thank you so much.
That's the real debate here. That's what we're arguing. We're not arguing if we want to kill babies or if we want to take away women's rights. Neither one of us want to take away women's rights. It's a matter of where we draw the line. And it's something that we've drawn the line on many times in the past. Though I will argue that people honestly do want to take away women's rights. I'm, for the most part, talking about the working class left and the working class right, not professional reactionaries and people that basically want to keep the status quo. Those people will say or do whatever they possibly can to make sure that you vote for them and to make sure that they stay in power. So if taking away women's rights helps them stay in power, then you're goddamn right that they're going to do that. I'm not talking about them, though. I'm talking about the general public here. And when given the decision between choosing if someone lives or dies, or choosing if someone has freedom or not, we really don't have a choice between the two. There is no correct answer, just one that makes you feel a little less shitty. And the thing that we should all remember is that the decision between having the right to life or having the right to choose is something that we rarely, if ever, actually get a say in. The ones that determine whether or not you live or die, or whether or not you have freedom or not, is the elites, is the state, is the government. It is the individuals that run the system that determine whether or not you go to prison for nonviolent crime, or if you get drafted to war and die. Those decisions are made for you all of the time. And it's not something that we often have an actual debate about. And that's why you see people that are pro-life also pro-war. It just depends on the circumstances, because most of us are pro-life. Most of us are pro-choice. Just most of us don't realize that we're being forced to make that decision. And if I am to make an argument for any of this, it would have to be for or against abortion. And not in the sense that we are choosing if someone lives or dies, or choosing if someone has freedom or not. It's the determination that not allowing people to have abortions disproportionately affects people of lower incomes. That means that more poor people are going to be affected by anti-abortion laws. And that just means that the poor are being forced to stay in poverty. We already know that disproportionately there are more uneducated people that are poor than are rich. And we already know that more poor people happen to be minorities. This is a way for us to continue the cycle of making sure that people in that group, in that lesser class, stay in that class. Because if they're busy reproducing and creating more babies, then they don't have time to go to school. They don't have time to make more money. They don't have time to better their situation. All they have the time to do is produce more children who have the ability to fight in war or work in prison. At least that's the way I look at it. My name is Aaron. If you do get a chance, please check out my Patreon. Every dollar does help fund this show, and thanks for watching.